Okay. Hello. Welcome back to Authentic Connection. I'm your host, Amanda Giroux, your food addiction coach. So, to my YouTube peeps watching this, hello and thank you. And to my podcast people listening, hello and thank you and welcome. So, today I want to talk about behavior. I want to talk about behavior change. So often, the clients that I work with, the people that I speak to, they talk about not being able to change their behavior, obviously, right? That's why they come to me. They have a behavior that they don't like around their food, whether they're binge eating, emotional eating, not eating, whatever the case is, but they have some habits that they'd like to change, some behaviors that they'd like to change. And ultimately, what I get 10 times out of 10 is that I can't change the behavior. So I want to talk about behavior change today because, again, it's just one of those commonsensical things that once you really get it, you get it, and you can finally move through and move forward. So the first thing I want to mention, the note that I want to talk about is everything that we do, speaking, walking, riding a bike, driving a car, running, anything we've ever done, it's all learned behavior, right? We didn't come out of the womb. We didn't walk out of our mom's womb, right? We didn't strut out. We didn't run out. We didn't start cartwheeling out. We just slid out or were pushed out. And then we had to learn. We had to learn how to walk. We had to learn how to talk. We had to learn how to hold a fork, a knife, a spoon, and feed ourselves. And everything was learned. And then what happens is we do something enough, repetition, and it gets into our mind, it gets into our body, it gets into our nervous system, and it becomes a habit. And then what happens is it becomes unconscious. And this is where most of our behavior lies, right? We don't think about things consciously. I don't need to think about putting my lips together to form words. I don't need to think about walking. I don't need to even think about driving all that much, right? That's almost become an unconscious behavior for anyone that has a license and drives out there, right? Like sometimes you arrive at your destination and you're like, how the hell did I get here? Because so much of the driving, like you do it so often, it becomes unconscious. And it's same to be said for riding a bike, right? Like that whole analogy, that whole term is like, oh, it's just like riding a bike because you never really forget. And it's because it gets into our subconscious. And this is ultimately what happens with our behavioral patterns, is because the brain, what it wants to do, it wants to keep you alive, it wants to keep you safe, and then it wants to commit as many things to memory as possible to open up space to learn new things. So as soon as it possibly can, it wants to develop a habit, like form a habit for you, so it can become unconscious. You can tuck it away back there, and then it can make room for you to learn new things. So it's not that you can't change the behavior. It's just that the behavior has become unconscious. So it's a little more challenging for you to change, but it's not impossible for you to change. So for anyone out there who's struggling with, if it's food addiction, if it's emotional eating, if it's binge eating, or maybe it's some other addiction altogether, some other compulsive behavior that you feel you have no control over, I'm here to tell you, you have control. You do have the ability to change it. It's just that it's sitting in your subconscious, I should say, sorry. It's sitting in your subconscious, and it's a habit that you formed and you've performed for so long that it's just a little more challenging. So all we really need to do is pull out the old behavior and replace it with a new one. It's really that simple. But at the end of the day, it comes down to whether you believe you can or not. So if you really want change and you really want to learn a new thing, because if you think about anything new, right, it's going to take time. It's going to take practice. You go to the gym and you do squats. You're not just, squatting a bunch of weight the first time, right? It's all new. You have to learn the mind muscle connection. And it's the same thing with the brain. It's the same thing with your habits. All it is habit building. All it is, what we want to do is we just want to create, it's called neuroplasticity. So we're developing new pathways in the brain. So it's like, if you picture, you take the same route to work every day, and you've taken the same route to work over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden there's construction, and then they build something and the street that you normally take becomes a dead end. I don't know, they build a subdivision and it's a dead end. The first little while, you're gonna try to drive that path. Like you're gonna take that route because you're so used to it, right? And what you have to do is like tell yourself, oh shit, yeah, I can't go down that way anymore because they don't have it. They don't, that's not, I can't take that path anymore. And then you redevelop new pathways in the brain that say, okay, so now this is my new route. And when you're facing, bad habits, let's call them, it's all about bringing awareness to them. So the habits that you have that you are feeling a way about that you don't want to have anymore, bring awareness to the fact that it's totally possible to change them, but let's bring them to the forefront of our mind. Let's bring them into the conscious. So think about what it is that you don't like that you do, that you feel you don't have control over, and let's just pull it out and look at it. So whatever it is, maybe it's you're eating at night. Night eating is a very common thing, mostly because people sit in front of the TV. And what does the TV do for us? It allows us to escape and disconnect. I still enjoy TV. Like it just helps me completely shut my brain off and unwind. I'll put a series on. I like The Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or I'll put a movie on and I can just unwind and disconnect. So when we're disconnected from ourselves, we're not going to be conscious about what we're putting into our mouths. And this is why we need to be really careful when we're snacking, when we're watching TV, because that can be the be all and end all of everything, right? Ruin your whole week's worth of eating. If you're eating really healthy and then you just eat mindlessly in front of the TV is the worst. So let's say it's night eating and you're just so used to coming home from work. Maybe you got kids, maybe you're getting the family ready, for you're feeding them, you're whatever, helping them with their homework, you've got your evening routine. And then part of your evening routine is, you get in your pajamas and you get your snacks and you sit and you watch TV. And that's your habit. And it's just an unconscious habit that you have. So it's like, now you know that that's a habit and it's a habit that you don't want to have anymore. So you just have to get curious about, okay, why do I do this? Well, this is my winding down time. This helps me de-stress. This helps me, not think about the day, or I can just relax. Well, do you need the food to relax? It would be my question. Is there a way to relax without the food? What does the food represent? What are you really trying to, accomplish with the type of food that you're eating? Because you could have celery and carrots, but let's say you're eating chocolate and I don't know, chips. It's like, what is it really about? Is there a way to replace the food? And then just start to get curious. But then what you want to do in terms of behavior change is start making changes. So something that I used to do, I used to eat dinner in front of the TV. And I was just noticing that was a thing. So every time I'd eat, I'd want to eat in front of the TV. Like I'd want to have some kind of show on because I would want to turn off while I was eating. And it was a really bad habit because I wasn't eating mindfully. I wasn't eating with awareness and I was overeating, especially when I would sit in the living room. So sometimes I'd sit at my dining room and watch TV, which was better, or I'd have my laptop on and I'd be eating in front of my laptop. But when I'd sit on that couch, like it was game over. All of a sudden, I'm just like so hungry. And it's because I'm disconnecting because I'm watching TV and I'm not mindful. Like sometimes we eat so fast and so mindlessly that we're not even connecting with the food that we're eating. And we just shovel, 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 shovel. And then we're just like, whoa, it's over. Because eating really is an experience, right? It can be a great experience if we allow it to be. So if we just take the few minutes and just be like, okay, let's get intentional about this. Like, what is the food that I'm eating? What do I, what feelings does this give me? And maybe start to make some changes in your daily routine. So instead of just sitting down and mindlessly watching TV and eating, like have dinner at the table. And if you're going to bring snacks to your TV shows or whatever, like portion them out beforehand. So say, okay, I'm only going to have, half a cup, or half a cup is nothing, but like a cup of popcorn, and then I'm going to add some veggies in there. And, make small changes. And then eventually you'll start to see that there's massive change happening ultimately. So start small, first get curious, and then start small, make small changes. Like I'm all about powerful, massive change, But at the end of the day, when you're building better habits, doing too much too fast can be sabotaging in itself, because it's almost like it overloads the brain. You're like, oh my God, I have to do all of this. And then it creates so much unfamiliarity and so many new things. And our natural instinct is to do what's comfortable and what's familiar. So it'll pull you back, and you kind of sabotage yourself sometimes when you do too much at once. I'm all about taking massive action, but when we're building habits, we want to implement them consistently and realistically so they stick. So again, I'll go back to the example of eating in front of the TV. So you're eating garbage in front of the TV every night. Swap out one. Let's say you have chocolate and chips. Swap out, I'd say, your chocolate or your chips, whatever. Swap out one of those for something healthier. So maybe do chips and carrots. And I know at first you're like, I don't want to eat carrots, I want to eat chocolate, but it's all about changing behavior, right? It's all about implementing healthy things. So, and if you're having some defiance issues around giving up your snacks, let's gain some leverage on that for a moment. So you're sick and tired of whatever it is. Maybe you're overweight, maybe you're facing health issues, diabetes, whatever the case is, and you're tired of this behavior, but you're not willing to give it up. So what are the consequences of that behavior? What are the negative consequences that you've had in the past? What are the negative consequences that you're going through now? And what are the negative consequences going to be in the future if you continue down this path? And just allow yourself in that moment to gain some leverage and some perspective. Because what ultimately happens a lot of, depending on the personality type, right? Like I get clients who are very defiant because they don't want to feel like they're giving up anything or being told what to do. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're the one telling you what to do, but you're defying against yourself. You're defying against, like, you're like a rebel without a cause here, right? Because you're defying against what? Being healthy, being happy, like what is it? So if you're feeling some resistance, great, notice it. Get curious about the resistance, but also like start to gain some leverage around your behavior. Like, what are the consequences for real if I continue down this path? Anyways, back to the behavior. So swap out your chips or your chocolate, one of the two, for something healthy, and continue eating your chips. Maybe cut down your portion size, and then ultimately get to a place where you're having healthy snacks. And this is the interesting thing, right? You're not going to want to eat as many carrots or celery and hummus, let's say, as you're going to want to eat chocolate and chips. So not only are you eating healthier, but you're probably eating less. And then over time, you're going to be like, this isn't as enjoyable as it once was, because you're not actually hungry. You're emotionally hungry. So you're craving some kind of disconnect. You're craving some kind of emotional stimulation, but it's not actual hunger. So when you swap out your tasty treats for healthy snacks, eventually your brain's going to be like, this is fucking boring. I don't want to do this. I'm not even hungry. Oh, all of a sudden you're not hungry. So now you're not feeling triggered to eat at night, because you've replaced your tasty treats with healthy snacks. And then your brain goes, this is boring, I don't want this, so I'm not going to be hungry anymore. So now you've convinced your brain that this is no longer a pleasurable thing. I don't want to eat at night anymore if this is what I'm eating. So it's really just about finding like these little hacks in your brain, because your brain, guys, your brain will work for you if you take the reins. But if you decide not to take the reins, it is going to run rampant, and it's going to take control, and it's going to do whatever the fuck it wants. You have to be the one to take control. So you can control what your behavior by controlling your mind, but you have to take action. You have to be the one to be in the driver's seat. Otherwise, the brain's just going to do, it's going to be like a 3-year-old on a sugar high running around the house unsupervised. Like you have to rein it in. But ultimately, you're the one that's in control. So when you're looking at behavior change, to recap, remember, you're always the one in the driver's seat. You're the one that can choose to be in the driver's seat. Any behavior is learned, which means any behavior can be unlearned or relearned in a different way. It just takes practice. It takes strengthening the muscle, right? You don't go to the gym and get buff tomorrow. You have to work at it consistently, do a bunch of reps consistently, take consistent action. And the best way for sustainable change is small, consistent action. Because what will happen is if we do too much change at once, the mind can get very uncomfortable. And if we're not equipped to handle that uncomfortability, if we haven't learned to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, we'll snap back, sabotage ourselves to go back to what's comfortable. And that's ultimately how people end up sabotaging themselves. And then they finally get stuck in that loop, right? In that bad habit loop. So implementing small change is a good way to achieve sustainable growth. And just start plopping in. And I'm more about adding than taking away. I would add twice as much as I take away. Because what happens is if we restrict ourselves too much too often and we take too many things away, again, that inner defiance comes in and goes, what the fuck? Like it just becomes all of these things I have to do. And then you feel extremely deprived. And then what do? Human beings, we rebel. We rebel against all the rules that we gave ourselves. And this is the crazy thing about the brain, right? Like it's so crazy, our behavior. I find it so interesting. Like when you're able to kind of take a step back and just watch yourself, it's just like, well, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. Like I'm sick and tired of all these rules. Well, you gave yourself the rules. You're the one that implemented you're the one that put all these things in place, but you've put too many restrictions on yourself. And you're taking away. So if you're taking away, you feel like you're lacking. And then you get pissy and then you get defiant. You're like, well, I don't want to be without. I don't want to lack. I want this, 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 and this. And then you just start eating garbage and doing whatever the hell you want, running around like a 3-year-old, right? That's just the reality. That's just the truth. So start small implementations, add more than you subtract. Always, that's my rule. Add double what you subtract, because eventually you're going to add so many healthy, positive things that there's not going to be a lot of room for the other shit, right? Like, and it's the same, like if you just look at your plate of food, right? If you've got only enough room on that plate and you triple the vegetables, and then you add a nice, piece of lean protein, you're not going to have a lot of room for anything else. Right? You're not really going to have any room for unhealthy stuff. There's not much room left. If you've got a ton of veggies and some good lean protein and then some healthy grains, healthy fats, what's left? If you're not allowing yourself space, like eventually you're going to not have space for anything else, if that makes sense. So add more than you take away. And when you take away in increments. Maybe you cut down your chocolate in half or your chips in half whilst adding something healthy. And then you'll find you'll find yourself full faster because you're eating actual food and you're eating junk. But it's all about just playing around with what works for you, and just always remember you're the one in the driver's seat. Any behavior that has been learned can be unlearned, and any new behavior takes time to feel like you're good at it. And just know that everything new is going to be uncomfortable at first. So just because it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel comfortable, like I always say this in like fitness terms, like your warm up eventually, or sorry, your workout eventually becomes your warm up if you stay at it. So whatever it is that's uncomfortable now, eventually will become like a new normal for you later if you consistently stay at it. And that gave me chills there, because I just thought of The Handmaid's Tale. When Aunt Lydia, I don't know if whoever watches, like if anyone watches The Handmaid's Tale, I'm like a huge Handmaid's Tale freaking nut. But like when Aunt Lydia says to them when they're in the Red Center, and she's like, it seems strange now and unfamiliar, but eventually this will be your new normal. And I just thought of that and it freaked me out. Anyways, I digress. That's what I wanted to say about behavior. So I hope that was helpful. If you want to learn more about food addiction, about overcoming unhealed trauma through food with your food addiction, binge eating, emotionally, whatever the case is, feel free to hit up my website, amandagiroux.com, GIROUX. You can also follow me on Instagram at AuthenticallyAmandaG. And I also have a Facebook group, Food Addiction Freedom, if you'd like to join that as well. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Again, time is the only thing that we can never get back. So I genuinely appreciate yours. Take care, guys.